Good evening, everyone. It is
Hello.
it is 7 o'clock exactly. Exactly. So we are starting exactly on time.
We are never late.
We are never late.
We just want to keep the streams on time.
Yes, we just want the streams to run on time. That's all we want. We're the punctual alternative to to certain other
Yes, we are punctual opinions.
punctual opinions. Yes. Welcome everybody. To our regular Wednesday stream.
Today's Monday.
Oh, Shim!
Captain, it's Monday.
No! I meant to say Monday. To our regular Monday stream. Thank you. This is why I have you here, because you know what day it is.
Then that's about it.
But welcome, everybody. We're still on our big economics kick as we move forward.
Yes.
And also, the weather can't decide what the hell it wants to be today, can it?
No, it can't. It's not quite spring. It's not quite summer. It's still trying to be winter. It's still a bit blustery. But
Yep.
it's getting there. The weekend was nice.
It was rather good.
But I think we shall, at the start of our stream, as we always do, take the opportunity to thank the people that come to the streams.
Yes.
Thank the members of the channel who throw us a little, $5 or $10, whatever it is, into the hat.
Yems.
Those who support us via, I believe it's PayPal now, instead of the usual sources, just because we're trying to get other things working in the meantime.
I can't seem to get stuff to link up, I'm afraid. There's some weird
then,
stuff going on.
As I notice and keep mentioning every once in a while, there seems to be some folk that come along and either throw $5 a month in via the Substack, or get one of the $50 or $100 sort of founder things as a kind of one-time gift. So all of that's there if you wish to support us. The more you support us, the more we know we can continue to do this stuff and it not be a complete and utter waste of time.
Yeah, there is still stuff being cooked up for the Substack, but we do try and focus on making sure we have 2 streams a week.
Yes, I think I probably will take some time out this week and next week to try and get something somewhat together that's a loose version of the speech I was going to do at Nomos, because I think that's still quite an important thing, but we've sort of mentioned the problems with that and how it's all gone, so anyone needs to make some inquiries about that, you know where to find us.
Yeah, if you guys are curious about what's going on with that, or if you are going to be in Manchester on the 26th and 27th of May, we are no longer doing a formal event, but we will at least be there, and there will be effectively a big weave, if you guys know what that is. Not in the sense I was recently locked from Twitter for making fun of the seasoning police.
The weaving of baskets, not the holding of weaves.
No, not the holding of weaves.
Hold my weave.
Yes. As it stands, I'm not able to shill this on Twitter because it is currently locked. So I'll have to do all my shilling tomorrow. So
yes.
you guys, the real OGs, you're here without that stupid Elon platform.
And before we carry on, everyone should just go and retweet all the stuff I put out today about the National Conservatism Conference that's going on, because that stuff's a massive psyop, and it's actually just like, I can't believe they've done it. They can't keep getting away with this.
They can't keep getting away with it.
But anyway, we'll get on to the subject that actually matters this evening, which is sort of a follow-on from the stream last week.
Which was a follow-on. Basically, we're doing a bit of an economics arc here when we talk about bailouts. But we are on to the level.
We're going to get to the juicy stuff.
Yeah. We've talked about the infinite bailout of other financial institutions. We've talked about the idea that they're just going to directly try and put money in people's pocket from the central banks. But we're going to talk about now how the money printer currently is utilized in terms of what we know as big tech.
Well, yeah, we've got both little intro kind of thing here we've written at the start of the notes for this. Why do venture capital firms throw hundreds of millions and dozens of funding rounds at companies that are not only failing, but never seem to turn a profit? They aren't just collapsing and reforming financial institutions for no reason. In the process, industries like big tech can be kick-started, given its strategic implications in terms of security and media, and then can be further supported and guided to do the regime's bidding. We see this openly now in public-private partnerships, which could be seen most blatantly in the handshake between COVID recovery loans on the one hand with government and the corporate compliance with new COVID laws and standards.
There's a lot of stuff going on in the quote-unquote tech sphere, and some of it's quite opaque. We know intuitively, those of us who've been paying attention, that what they do is they pump all of these tech companies or pseudo tech companies because they don't even need to be in tech now.
Well, as you might suggest, some of them are just no real.
Yeah, a lot of it is just not real, but they'll pump quite literally in some cases billions of dollars into a speculative industry to see if they can bump start it into something that is self-sustaining in the way that Facebook became self-sustaining. Although there's a very low chance of that in most of these cases, because as we know, Facebook, Google, and most of the existing big tech giants, as we went through in torturous detail during our Social Media is Fake and Gay and our Prism streams, they were created, fostered, and some of their main contractors are the US federal government. So it's quite hard for a lot of people who are engaging in this process, at least semi-earnestly, to get something moving. But a lot of them aren't.
I see Sean Wieland, or how you pronounce it in chat. Long time no see, I believe. But he's sort of mentioning the economy aspect of this, and we talked about that briefly last week.
Yes.
The thing is, we want to look at the aspect that isn't in relation to market dynamics. It's not directly related to do with necessarily currency valuation. There's a little bit of a discussion of interest stuff we'll have further on, but we want to look at what else they are able to achieve by starting these industries, these companies, having them collapse, and then coming back in and re-engineering them all again, and what that allows them to do.
Ultimately, all of this is about men in rooms with connections to billions of dollars that seem to come out of thin air. And all of these venture what were venture capital firms in a private equity sense are now effectively credit brokers.
Yes.
They take on credit from banks that have access to central bank credit, and they do it all ultra leveraged in a way that they know they will never be called out on. Because as we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, all of it can just be wound up. All of it can be rebought by the Federal Reserve as quote unquote toxic debt. The bits that are viable, we've sold into the market, as we talked about last week, and the whole thing will be wound up, and people will be just told not to talk about it. They stepped in, they saved the liquidity, all that stuff we talked about last week when we talked about the infinite bailout. What we're trying to show people here really is how the money printer money makes its way into the hands of like second and third order elite people. How it makes it into the hands of sons and daughters and cousins and nephews of the elite class, and how the malinvestment from the money printer isn't just structural. It isn't just to do with how it sets up incentives. They're taking the money at every step and utilizing it deliberately through their connections, and a lot of the times through setting up patsies.
Yes.
In a lot of
There's
cases.
going to be quite a lot of stuff to this, so I suppose we'll get moving into the sources we've got at the start here.
For some reason, it seems to have decided that our other window doesn't exist, so I will quickly go and fix that. But yeah, we've got the Floyd dollars there. Excuse the other window there. I'm trying to get this to
only eligible for the purchase of fentanyl, I presume.
Yes, it's I just found this on Google. It's the George Floyd commemorative $20, which, if you know the story, is very, very funny. Because he was originally pulled over for kind of a $20. But anyway, this is a story we talked about last week, and this is kind of the link between the two, which is Vice Media is finally going bankrupt after frittering away as a media company a $5 billion.
Oh yeah, we showed last week they got
valuation.
At one point, when their valuation at its highest was $4.5 billion, supposedly on its own, and then got another $5 billion of venture capital funding over the space of 2 years.
Yeah,
and then here we are 3 years later, and the company's not even worth $500 million.
No.
So they didn't even go and spend this $10 billion of sort of value that they had on assets or anything.
They didn't.
It was just spaffed up the wall.
It was just burned, and what's happening is George Soros and the other equity partners who invested in it are now basically just taking the ship.
Well,
they burned through all the capital they could have, and they are now they're still surviving. They've gone into Chapter 11, bankruptcy, but they will still continue in a diminished form as a direct mouthpiece of investors and NGOs.
Well, that's what I was going to say. This money is obviously thrown at them so that they can just fire hose globalist propaganda into all media channels at all times without ever having to worry about being a business.
Well, Vice is a great example of a quote unquote going concern that has never been a going concern. Vice, in its current guise, at least as an online magazine, has never been economically viable. It has always existed on endless rounds of investor funding. And the reason for that is the political capital that having these, prestige online publications talking for you has. And now it's kind of being downsized and wound up a little bit.
But this isn't even like the silliest example, because it's not just big media companies. It's just like garbage.
Well,
I mean, the example you've got here is...
This is from the 2016, 2017 kind of... This was supposedly peak tech bubble back in the...
This was also peak QE until 2020 came around.
Yes, it was. This is peak malinvestment in the previous sense. This was supposed to be the end of the very obvious tech bubble. This was supposed to be one of the reckonings of the big tech silliness.
Oh no, it sounds like America's our favourite $400 juice machine will be no longer. And anyone that was here for last week's stream will remember the Silicon Valley Bank article where they decided to interview some bloke that made high-end cat food and another guy who was building smart ovens.
Smart ovens, yes. But this is what I thought of.
Again.
Smart ovens, never again. The big thing was that there was the Juicero became the poster child for the insanity of the investment rounds that Silicon Valley went through.
Juicero?
No, Juicero.
No, it's a Juicero. I bet you that's how they pronounce it in their horrible
I hate it.
Promotional material.
Yeah, the Juicero with a little thing over it for the Spanish market is a classic. Yes, this is a real callback, but it was a $400 packet squeezer. The Juicero they squeeze in the packet. They said it was unsafe to squeeze it yourself. And it got 118 million in funding from prominent venture capitalists like Google Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, Mello Anthony was invested through Mello 7 Tech Ventures Fund.
Even the Campbell Soup Company.
Well, spending the money is the point. It's not what you spend it on; it's that you do spend it, because all of these companies here really are related back to central banking. They have been given large amounts of easy credit, and to keep getting easy credit, they have to be spending it. Here's just another one. Turns out Juicero's ludicrous Wi-Fi juice is even more necessary than it sounds. This is the one that goes to the fact that it was sold for $700 at one point.
It was like the PS3.
Yeah. Basically, it's not actually a juicer. It's just something that squeezes juice from a packet into a cup. That is $700 and was connected to Wi-Fi and got $118 million in venture funding. And nobody bothered to check if the thing worked or how it worked. As I said, the malinvestment was so far down the pipeline at this point that yes, people were making fun of it, but it never self-corrected.
Someone in the chat's making a point here. It might not be the point I think it is. It's on par with the Soylent opener grips. They're too cutting edge.
Yeah.
They need to make this in 15 years' time, and people that want to drink packet juice are no longer able to actually squeeze the juice out of the packet themselves.
Well, this is from May 2020. Even at the height of, the initial lockdown rounds, even at the height of the, sit home and be a hero stuff, no one quite knew if Netflix was making money or not. In fact, no one seems to quite know if Netflix has ever made money or not.
Where's Zoom these days? Yeah. Remember that was cherry picked as some sort of a gold plated stock you were supposed to buy in at the start of lockdown. And if I'm right in saying it's now worth buttons compared to what it was.
Well, it's the same with Netflix. All of these bubbles burst, but even at the height of the bubbles, no one seems to quite know if any of these flagship tech firms, household names like Netflix even, are making money or not, because they all exist on so many different rounds of investor funding, all playing a shell game through various financial institutions, various semi-philanthropic groups, various funds that all seem to have their root in the easy credit environment created by the repo stuff we talked about in terms of the infinite bailout, and in terms of the expectation that institutions like Silicon Valley Bank and other kind of structural contagions that could poison the wider economy, in quotes, will be sorted out by the Federal Reserve, and no one shall speak of it again. It's become such a prevalent business model that one of the lead examples we will have of this as we go forward is WeWork, because WeWork is a tech company that wasn't actually a tech company. There was no tech in WeWork.
Well, yeah, that'll come up later on anyway. But yes, that it's one of the best examples of how did you ever think that was going to work?
Well, I don't think anyone ever did. The only way I can read WeWork is a roundabout way for people who have property portfolios to boost their value using basically self reinvestment stuff. I cannot see this as a group of people who thought this was a good idea.
To go back to the previous thing about Netflix, someone's making or is sort of underhandedly making the point that the CEO of Netflix was the grandnephew of Edward Bernays.
Yes, he was.
And this is kind of the point we're making, is that it is no coincidence that Netflix has been run at a massive loss at the behest of a man who is a direct relation of Edward Bernays.
Well, the point we're trying to get across, and we always try and get across, is the stated goal, i.e. to make money of these funds, is not what is happening in reality, because none of these companies, apart from the big boys, apart from your Googles and your Facebooks, make any money whatsoever. All venture capital seems to be in massive, consistent failure. There is an endless bailout, not from the federal government, but from all of these kind of angel investor firms, JP Morgan Chase, SoftBank, and all of that.
Citibank, Barclays investment sector, or any of the various intermediaries that are like Thiel Money, or some sort of Bloomberg business thing, or any of your big like Jamie Dimon style, as you said, angel investors.
Yes. It's also the problem we have, and I know Sean Wyland, before we went and mentioned kind of private equity versus the central banks. Unfortunately, that dichotomy doesn't exist in the same way anymore.
No.
Because private equity has been utterly routed by the availability of cheap credit.
Well, it's called crowding out.
Yeah, it is. They have a lot of the private equity firms and a lot of the venture capital firms have really moved to race to IPO models, as we'll see with WeWork. WeWork was a massive liquidity and asset purchasing exercise, and the eventual goal and the eventual outcome really was an IPO to dump this partially on retail investors to recoup some of the losses. And that's what we'll see going through a lot of this, in that the model of private equity, taking things private, taking things off the market, using them as a way to get old money working, as some of them did, does not exist in the same form anymore.
No.
I mean, the most headline example we saw of that was Twitter being taken off by Elon Musk. And that has, I think most people can agree, really not gone anywhere. It has been almost like a cautionary tale.
As a product / service, it has done nothing but decline since then.
Yes. Whether or not that has been engineered by propaganda is up for debate, but it has not been a roaring success story.
No, not at all.
But the WeWork story was largely reported almost like a soap opera, almost like a celebrity story.
Yes.
It reported in a light entertainment sense, which baffles me. There weren't that many post-mortems of what happened in terms of investment. It was mostly about, capitalism, kooky CEO, kooky weed smoking private jet CEO, cool guy, he's hyperactive CEO guy.
Reddit.
Yeah, Reddit CEO guy was really what caught all the headlines. Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway's new series, We Crashed. It all became very fictionalized. In fact, it all became very hyper-real.
Yes.
They turned this into a fictional event for people because the factual event is very difficult to explain away.
It's very strange as well that something so specifically related to aspects of commercial and retail spaces, office spaces, and supposed workspace technology that never showed up.
Yeah.
These are really specific, mundane, inner industry things. How could it be that that's something that's not only reported on, but emphasized? They've chose to emphasize, as you see, these specific hyper real aspects of it.
Yes.
I see Sean in chat talking about 100 million to Tucker exclusively to Twitter. Please do not bring the Tucker Elon Twitter cope to our space. This is the one places where you will not find it.
When it happens, we'll tell you why it happened. Born in Israel but raised in the United States.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't help myself. I was laughing at something else.
There'll be a lot of item bouncing phrases in a whole host of this. You'll find that Adam Newman is someone who kind of appears out of nowhere and is just given billions of dollars by ultra wealthy people he just happens to have family connections to. Anyway, Adam Newman had a dream of the future of workspaces. Tired of mundane and depressing cubicle lifestyle, Newman wanted to make an office work and experience alongside his Oregon native business buddy, Miguel McKelvey. He doesn't really feature that much. The problem is that he gets crowded out by Adam Newman's clown show. And a lot of the story, as it was reported, gets crowded out by Adam Newman's clown show.
He's a weird, barefoot, hippie, new age guy.
Yes, he
who
is.
Takes $4.6 billion a year from JP Morgan Chase.
The pair opened the first WeWork location in New York. So this is glossing over a lot because they had a venture that was similar beforehand, and they somehow sold it to a San Francisco landlord for $15 million, and no one seems to quite know where all that initial money came from. But anyway, with some leases, they were contracted for up to 15 years. Others could rent monthly. The business boomed and put Newman and McCaveley's brainchild on the map. After years of success, again, this whole story isn't very good. It never
succeeded, though, did it? Yeah. Really?
WeWork is valued at $4.6 billion. Big shot investors such as JP Morgan Chase and Co., Key Rail Prince, Wellington Management, and Goldman Sachs invest in the company. The thing is, this comes before the valuation. The angel investors come before any of the quote-unquote success.
Yes.
Because WeWork was never successful. The entire premise of WeWork that is never really put into any of these timelines, or skepticism, wacky CEO, is that this is the oldest scam in the book. What they are doing is trying to find cheap rents and expensive subletting. And what they are trying to do is bet that their long-term leases that they have bought, buy low, sell high. They have literally just inserting themselves as property middlemen in a sublet. This has nothing to do. The idea that WeWork as a technology firm is nonsensical. The only thing that makes WeWork a technology firm is the model. Well, the model is what signifies what big tech is, not the fact that it is technologically based.
Well, I was going to say as well that this wouldn't work without you operating on a very big scale straight away.
Yeah.
Because anyone that tried to engage in subletting in this sort of professional corporate form that they tried to turn it into would fail instantly. One, because what you're doing is a scam, and two, because it doesn't work. Because people go, well, I don't want to lease offer you for 6 months for a more expensive rate. I'd rather get it for 12 elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's this constant attempt to try and sell you even shorter. And to try to sell up to the point whereby, you're engaging with people whose long-term planning doesn't actually go further than 6 months.
Well, the story is written doesn't really make any sense here. There's the idea that they take out these leases, they have these shared office spaces, they have all these sublets, and magically money just rains from the sky. They have billions thrown at them, essentially for operating a property portfolio, none of which they own. This is just a company that has long-term leases on buildings. They don't actually have any assets. The only assets they have, as we'll get to later, was cheap office furniture.
Hmm.
It is a company that does nothing. And any investor could see that it is a company that does nothing. At its peak, it was valued, I believe, at 47 billion. After I think SoftBank put in, it says here 4.4 billion, and then another 2 billion. I believe it ended up 17 billion deep in them at one point.
Yep.
After all the bailout
And then
rounds.
what would that be? Less than 18 months later, it goes to IPO at a value of at least 50 billion, and then completely collapses and dies.
Yeah, it nearly got to its IPO. They nearly pawned this off on the retail investors, and then the whole arse fell out of it.
Yep.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. But that's something, the timeline, that man comes from Israel, money falls from the sky, question mark, question mark, question mark, $47 billion WeWork valuation. The business was just successful. Well, how? It's a sublet. It was never going to. Well, it just worked. People just threw billions at it. Okay, but there's a lot more to this story here, and I'm not sure there's anything in the notes missing here.
No.
But here's WeWork's kind of Crunchbase page, and the funding stuff here is eye-watering, because they eventually did go to IPO, but it didn't go particularly well, as we'll end on here, because WeWork limping on and people wondering how it managed to still exist in any form whatsoever is like some of the FTX stuff, but with property. People are baffled that WeWork is still around, and that Adam Newman is still around in any form whatsoever.
Yes.
It is a great example of they will never be allowed to fail, and there is a shadow economic aspect going on here. The purpose of WeWork, in my contention, was not to create a viable business. The purpose of WeWork was to keep expensive city center office space from collapsing value-wise.
Yes, it's using up capacity without ever actually putting it to any productive use.
Yes. It's the thing is, Cryptoman, it's a shell game, but it's a shell game on a massive scale.
Yes.
It's a shell game on a shell game on a. It's like an onion. You see, big tech's like an onion.
Well, no,
It makes
it's
you
almost
cry.
the same kind of thing as like imagine like an extortion racket, but a professional one, and that no store could operate in your town without paying dues to WeWork, because WeWork, in some sort of sense, owns the prime sort of lease for any property, and anyone else that's using it underneath that is only allowed to use it under certain conditions or certain lengths of time or at a certain price.
Well, they went the secondary market stuff. Well, they tried to get in the secondary market in 2019. If you look at the funding rounds from 2019 for WeWork, it is debt financing, post-IPO equity they needed after their eventual 2021 IPO, equity, post-IPO debt financing, So WeWork has been just a giant debt sink for both SoftBank.
Well, go back to that one instance you clicked on there.
5 billion, I believe.
5 billion all in the space of a year.
That was the kind of emergency one, and then there was one here, I believe, from
1.8 million from Goldman Sachs.
And a lot of this is just SoftBank eating shit.
Yeah.
Because those of you who don't know, SoftBank is
that's another Silicon Valley bank, basically.
Kind of. It's the Japanese equivalent. It's a giant Japanese bank that has been instructed to take the liquidity from Japanese central banks and attempt to find the next Facebook with it. They've been aggressively trying to get themselves a toehold in the tech space, which kind of explains partly how some of their investments were at least partially allowed to fail.
Well, think about it in this way though as well, is that they're not just going out there to start the next Facebook because they want to make money. Look at what Facebook offers the American government or the British government nowadays in terms of data, in terms of propaganda. I mean, the whole Cambridge Analytica thing and how they worked hand in hand with Facebook and to make the whole Brexit campaign work.
Yeah.
And have all sorts of new forms of political engagement through that. And how that went even deeper again during COVID as we had all these sort of personal safety warnings from the WHO or this, that, and the next government on Facebook. It basically became like an avenue to get straight into your home, like the bloody telescreens from 1984.
Well, what all of this is valuation fraud.
Yes.
What they are doing is they are putting money into a non-viable business signing their own checks, and then saying that this business is worth X amounts of money. The only value in terms of WeWork was its valuation. It is a classic .com bubble, only exists on paper. It is something that is not supposed to be possible, but always ends up being possible because of how liquidity in an unlimited credit environment works. You can just pump 22 billion into a failed business, and it didn't sink its creditors.
No, business as usual.
A business can take up 22 billion of liquidity from the market, and none of its creditors can sink. None of its staff were ever prosecuted for anything. They didn't become pariahs, as we've seen. They effectively got away with it. It was a massive, I believe, property valuation scam.
Yes.
It was a massive investment scam. It was a multi-level scam. And I use the term fraud appropriately. Large amounts of fraud were committed in advertising this business as being worth $47 billion.
It's not even like idiots come up with some stupid idea like a $400 juice squeezer or high-end cat food. This was never going to work from the start, and it was only ever allowed to roll into any form of working order because it provided some other purpose. It provided some other function.
Well, good question there from Sean Wasingen. So how much of it is a mandate to absorb liquidity and credit? Well, all the stuff that didn't work in terms of boosting the property market in city centre locations in America is effectively inflation that's been burned.
Yeah.
They are all popping champagne, really, because they've been able to take 22 billion from the money printer,
open a bigger plug hole in the sink, and pour more money in.
Fire hose it into, office space in America to keep all of this show going, keep the property show going, and then they're able to basically have 22 billion disappear into, the wider economy with no questions being asked. And no one calling it a bailout, because that is effectively what WeWork worked as.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little summary of the events of WeWork as well from Mises.org as well from 2019. I'm not sure exactly if there's anything in here we won't find elsewhere or say ourselves. I just thought it was nice as a little resource to add to what we've got here as well.
Well, they talk about it, an IPO disaster and the problem with easy money. They rightly identify the fact. SoftBank has $9 billion at stake, 47 billion valuations.
Yeah, I like the sky high valuation was based on the fact that we managed to define itself as a tech company. To this day, no one is quite sure what technology was actually offered.
Anyone who looked at this will be able to see, like I said, they are just a subletting company with a slick marketing pitch and this bullish insistence from everyone from Goldman Sachs to SoftBank to fellow Silicon Valley people that this is in some way a tech industry, that this is in some way a tech company, and therefore, it just works. It just makes money. It's future Facebook, and that's really, it's like how some of the crypto stuff worked. Although we'll get into crypto later. In that anyone who had like blockchain in the name of their company basically became a money printer because people just thought it was a sure bet.
It's the next big thing.
It is the next big thing. There's a terrible, just awful article here from
the New
Republic, which has a lot of e-begging in it as well, and I can't actually zoom out enough that you can see the headline properly.
Flat people, flat people. They're all flat. They're not people.
But yeah, they got the flat people. It's called How WeWork Got Away with Spectacular Failure. And it's basically, we'll see a few more of these, that the failure of WeWork was kind of like left jacketed.
Yes.
It was
or ideology jacketed at least.
Yeah, it was portrayed as a lifestyle interest story and then explained the way as a failure of late-stage capitalism. The idea that all this money just comes out of nowhere, and this is just irresponsible capitalism. All these people just have all this money. Where does money come from? Surely central bank didn't print it. We're not going to talk about that, but anyway, there's the great dear reader begging here to help with the Supreme Court stuff. This is from November 2020, and it's advertising somebody's book. It talks about nightmarish, relatively short-lived reign hints at the one future phase of nihilistic capitalism could look like if the market-fueled economic inequality is allowed to continue to grow unchecked. I mean, this is to do with liquidity. This is to do with easy credit. I don't understand how somebody could come across this and say, "Oh, this is to do with market inequality." Well, where's all the money coming from?
Well, it's all those capitalists at the Federal Reserve minting it.
Well, there's all kinds of stuff in here. The only other bit of this that I found funny is this little pulled quote here, which is your kind of leftist limited hangout about the whole thing, which is the whole WeWork experiment was in the end a ruling class parlor game gone awry, with no significant consequences for any of the people who rolled the dice. That is partly true from a surface level, but...
The paragraph you've got next to it as well, though, taps into something you were talking about earlier on. Not even the expendable labour pool and near unfettered access to venture capital would save WeWork from the lethal combination of the company's inability to turn a profit, which they probably don't explain why you couldn't turn a profit doing what they did, and Newman's personal style of derangement. In the summer of 2019, after nearly 10 years of doing business, WeWork filed for an initial public offering. So, don't focus on the fact that this is an unworkable business model that was propped up by the Federal Reserve and nothing else. It's because the guy that ran it was all funky and weird and he was a yuppie.
Well, the whole point is that these weird tech people are able to just magic billions of dollars and that the investment class is stupid. We'll get to some more of that. There's a lot of that going on here. But yeah, there's this performative naivety in the left reading of what happened to WeWork that they do not seem to acknowledge the malinvestment, the deliberate malinvestment from large financial institutions seems to hint at the fact that this was an exercise in propping up property portfolios. Nobody says that, and it is so obvious. How do you lose $22 billion when you're paying for office space because you are subsidizing the rents?
The 40 or 50 billion that's been made elsewhere by those same angel investors and their property portfolios, where their position is now consolidated by the business they've brought in to eat up the spare capacity in the market. It's perfect.
It's also
what have they got as a conclusion sort of paragraph?
Buy my book, basically.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's a little surprised that early on Newman took a liking to his fellow billionaires.
Yeah.
Oh, they talk about Musk here.
How do you do fellow billionaires?
In 2014 interview with Forbes, Newman said he was eager to get to plans from WeWork Mars to Musk after Musk broke open the path to the planet. Newman said WeWork would join him there to build a community like there's never been. Oh, that goes to show...
Faustian space nonsense. Yeah. How the hell does... Well, that's the neat part. They don't have $500 million in assets. Well, this is one...
God, he does actually just look like somebody's slightly dishevelled mum.
We're going to have to get into Adam Newman and some of the
mercurial entrepreneur.
He's mercurial, yes, because... Adam Newman and WeWork, like I said, they effectively got away with it. No matter how hard you fail, if you are needed for a function, such as supporting city centre office spaces, there is no limit to the funding you can get. This is how the money printer keeps the managerial class fed and keeps the show going. This is a Financial Times article from August 2022 about the complete inability of Adam Newman to just kind of fuck off.
Yeah.
He's somebody who cannot stop being given hundreds of millions of dollars by financial insiders, even though there have been TV shows made about what a terrible money manager, terrible boss, and terrible businessman he is. At this point, I believe he is some kind of Patsy.
Yeah, of course.
He's somebody who is kind of a wacky face on a grim experiment of credit expansion. They are funneling the money printer through these ridiculous looking people because none of this money is his. all of this kind of fails to talk about. Yeah.
Sean Weiland in chat again. God Lord, they roped Andreessen Horowitz into this. Isn't Mark Andreessen supposed to be our guy too? Wait
No.
till we tell you, sir. Wait till we tell you. Because of course, anyone that's not aware, the Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz is Benjamin Abraham Horowitz, who's the son of conservative attaché to people like Rumsfeld, David Horowitz.
Yeah, these are supposed to be the smart finance people from the conservative elite, and here they are roping in Adam Newman, and you'll never guess. You'll never guess what they gave him. $70 million.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to go to the quotes in this article you want to bring up?
Oh, sorry. I will. I'll talk about the thing. Is this kind of buries the lead slightly, because he never quite went away. He's already been given a small loan, a small wager,
a small loan of $70 million.
A small loan of $70 million by Andreessen. Yeah, such numbers make the markets as large as residential accommodation more tempting for venture capitals, but the outspoken Andreessen, who made his name as the inventor of the first web browser while still a university student, is known for taking big bets on the boldest ideas. What is Adam Newman, the happy Hebrew? What's his big idea here? Carbon credits.
Yep.
70 million was spent from Andreessen Horowitz on a blockchain carbon credit system that has yet to materialize.
Yeah.
Flow
Flow Carbon, a separately managed business launched by Newman with his wife, Rebecca. There's a very anglicised spelling of Rebecca there, isn't it? The former actress once described as his strategic thought partner. Flow Carbon brings carbon credits the environmental permits companies buy to offset their emissions onto the blockchain. Its first token, backed by a bundle of carbon offsets, is named the Goddess Nature Token. Andreessen Horowitz appears to have been attracted less by the New Age branding than by the size of the financial opportunity. The carbon credit market could potentially grow to $50 billion by 2030, and on-chain carbon credits can help facilitate this reality. Enthused Ariana Simpson, one of the firm's general partners, announced its investment.
Again, Andreessen Horowitz is sinking $70 billion. These are supposed to be our guys. This is Horowitz, that Horowitz, and Andreessen, Netscape Andreessen, le-based guys tweeting out Milton Friedman quotes. And he's giving the WeWork wacky guy $70 million to create a carbon credits blockchain service, and effectively rehabilitating him in the process in the venture capital scape. The actual business that they're investing $350 million in, it kind of buries the lead here in the numbers. Yeah, $350 million, size of Andreessen Horowitz's investment in Flow. It's a firm called Flow, which no one seems to quite understand what Flow does. But we'll get onto that in a sec. Here's Flow Carbon, carbon-backed tokens, leveraging blockchain technology to create a transparent, efficient, and liquid spot market for carbon credits. Basically, it's them prototyping the personal carbon credit score stuff.
Yep.
They are just using the WeWork guy.
Have they got a little summarized, about us section?
No, they don't, because it is horseshit. Let me read their about section here. With nearly 6 million.
Never again.
With nearly 6 million hectares of forest disappearing each year, the need for climate action grows more urgent each day. What does this have to do with blockchains?
Yeah,
carbon credits are the primary financial mechanism to help prevent this deforestation.
What are they now? Says who?
But the carbon markets must scale by 15 times by 2030 in order to achieve the ambitious climate goals of the Paris Agreement. By harnessing the new technology of blockchain, it's just a hand wave.
Yeah.
How are you going to end climate change? Whoosh, whoosh, there's a blockchain.
Yeah, step 1, carbon credits. Step 2, blockchain. Step 3, question mark. Step 4,
Flow
the
Carbon
Shire.
is able to add liquidity and transparency to the voluntary carbon market, allowing more capital to flow directly to major conservation, reforestation, and ecosystem restoration projects. Flow Carbon also supports new innovative projects like EV charging, biochar products, and the distribution of cleaner and healthier cooking mechanisms in the developing world. That is their whole about page.
Well, yeah, obviously, reforestation and ecosystem restoration projects. That'll be rewilding.
There's no way you could cut down 6 million hectares. It's even worse. How many chainsaws you got, my dude?
What's the fluorocarbon team looking like? Let's check the physiognomies real quick.
This is very obviously a scam.
What you know? No, you can't say that.
It's just a scam. It's just them going blockchain environment.
They've like spun the wheel.
Token reforest. It's wow. It's fucking. This is what our guy, Andreessen thinks is worth 70 million. Are you kidding me?
One of the guy, chief blockchain officer, has a lazy monkey NFT.
He got the NFT. It's all so terrible.
He's probably the only real one. The rest of them aren't real. Phil Fogel.
Yeah, but this is what Andreessen Horowitz sees as appropriate for its 70 billion. These are not our guys. Never think that they are.
Yeah, it's not a scam. It's a creative interpretation of investment principles.
Well, it's just the fact that he's able to just waltz back in, ask for 70 million, and get away with that as a company explanation. Their investment in Flow, the actual investment announcement.
This is direct from the Andreessen Horowitz website.
This is direct from the
written by Andreessen himself.
If anyone tells you that Mark Andreessen is our guy, I would like to read you this. He says of Adam Neumann, a man who pissed away $22 billion of investment in a subletting scam.
Before you get to that, it's just the lines above that there. My partner, Catherine Boyle, why not just say your wife, mate?
Yeah.
Has written about this, and I think she's right. Can Zoom save the American family? Can Starlink save the American mother? He was actually like the conservative given techno anti-woke case literally being put forward in front of us.
Yeah, this is them basically coming out and being like, we can use a concierge app to save the American mother and family. It's just Adam is a visionary leader who revolutionized the second largest asset class in the world, commercial real estate, by bridging community and brand to an industry in which neither existed before. It's a sublet. Anyway, Adam and the story of WeWork have been exhaustively chronicled, analysed, and fictionalised, sometimes accurately. This is him trying to rehabilitate the guy. For all the energy put into covering the story, it's often underappreciated that only one person has fundamentally redesigned the office experience and led to a paradigm-changing global company in the process. A company that is a joke, that is about to be delisted from the New York Stock Exchange because its stock has been worth less than $1 for years at this point.
Yeah. We understand how difficult it is to build something like this.
Yeah.
And we love seeing repeat founders build on past successes by growing from lessons learned. For Adam, the success and lessons are plenty. And we are excited to go on this journey with him and his colleagues building the future of living. We think it is natural that for his first venture since WeWork, Adam returns to the theme of connecting people through transforming their physical spaces and building communities where people spend the most time, their homes. Residential real estate, the world's largest asset class, is ready for exactly this change.
So what's the business? He's not described it.
Well, it's going to be WeWork for homes.
Yeah.
Keep going up here.
Yeah.
I want to read the rest of this because I've just seen some bangers here.
Yeah, keep going then.
Shelter is one of our most basic needs. Think about what we did in the stream last week about the Labour government's new plan, or the soon-to-be incumbent Labour government's new plan for basically a right to housing and how it connects with this and probably some kind of public-private partnership.
Possibly.
We're going to get in a few years. In a world where limited access to home ownership continues to be a driving force behind inequality and anxiety, giving renters a sense of security, community, and genuine ownership has transformative power for our society. When you care for people at their home and provide them with a sense of physical and financial security, you empower them to do more and build things. And then he goes on to mention stakeholders and this, that, and the next thing. But that is like literally the crux of everything we've been talking about put at the bottom there. That's great.
James, Mary, and Jai's gonna sublet your living room on the blockchain.
No, I don't want a tandoori oven in the living room.
But this is how based in red pill Mark Anderson talks about the WeWork guy, who is a joke in every single circle because he is a patsy for performatively mismanaging money right up there into the hands of all of the inner city, leaseholders and property owners. $22 billion property bailout by stealth.
Yes. Right, well, I think we're going to try and move as much as we can through these next sets of sources.
The NPR one here is just funny because they talk about the $350 million from Andreessen Horowitz, and they say it's not feminist.
Oh no!
$350 million for WeWork co-founder shows how broken and biased venture capital is. This is what we mean when we say that woke is just a massive distraction and ties you up in nonsensical narratives. Because this is them coming out. They're not just blasting him and saying, look, this man should be in prison. Like, there should actually be, like, foaming... like, if you're going to be a foaming Marxist, now is the time.
Yeah.
Now is the time. And they're talking about the fact that it's not being given to brown women. It's
the MDE sketch from The Ideas, man. Your living room. Piss.
Powerhouse. Anderessen Horowitz. Flow. WeWork. It's also tiresome. No one at this point, by the way, has said what Flow is, what Flow does, what its business plan is. Is it an app? Is it a property management service? We'll see. It's kind of both, and also neither. But here's another one. Forbes. WeWork co-founder Adam Newman's real estate startup sounds an awful lot like one he invested in 2 years ago. And we start to get to some of what Flow, the $350 million idea is. It's a digital concierge app. It's a lifestyle living app where they will buy up cheap property, make it look higher end, and then organize like community table tennis tournaments there and pretend you have a community.
Yeah. No, you'll live in a room with 12 other adults and you all live in bunk beds and you share the one shower, the one bathroom, the one kitchen.
It's okay. You have an app that tells you when your community poker game is and your community mini golf on the roof is.
Yeah, and your monthly pizza night.
Yeah, it's basically the front end stuff for the 50-minute city in many ways. Why is the property cheap? Yeah, but the thing is, property isn't cheap right now, which makes this whole thing more baffling. They talk about the fact that basically he owned a service called...
The future of living.
Yeah, a service called Alfred, which is what they refer to as a digital concierge. Like Alfred from Batman.
Yes.
Basically what you have is you have a digital butler who makes your shitty condo feel more high-end by an app packing on the head. That's what it is. It's that's all it is. It's an app that makes your terrible living conditions appear less difficult for you. That is what the big idea of all, what Alfred is and what this Flow is. It's once again, it's fucking nothing. It's a giant waste of time and money, but they're going to go out there and buy up developments with all this money. Because buying up the developments is the point. Wasting the money in a way that is productive to the quote-unquote wider economy is the point. All of this, all of the firing of the money printer has two purposes, which is to keep the thing going, oh God, just fire hose more money into it, and create all of these apps and solutions for the coming pod living. It serves double duty. If it wasn't so evil, it would be kind of genius. And they do it all while pretending that this is capitalist private industry money.
Look at this as well. During an experiment at several buildings Newman owned in Connecticut, where Alfred and condo manager Gravestar were involved, the real opportunity became clear. Using software to manage properties would be far more lucrative than the services Alfred was offering. So here is the software package that will be used to help function alongside some sort of organization like Serco and whatever other Flow thing is rolled up together so that we have some, minimum infrastructure guarantee for housing and shelter.
It really is. It's a way of saying you don't need a physical property manager. There doesn't need to be a property management firm. We'll just do it with an app.
Yes.
It's the dehumanization of property management.
And as someone mentioned in chat earlier on as well, this all sounds very similar to something called Theranos.
Yes, it is very similar to Theranos. There's a Variety article here, which is a great link between them, saying reassessing Adam Newman, the cult of the founder, and how WeWork is not Theranos. The whole gist of this article really is that Adam Newman was an idiot, but he wasn't malicious, guys. It's not Theranos. They're not the same, says Osprey of Holmes, who was found guilty on 4 counts of fraud in the trial, stemming from the collapse of a Silicon Valley startup blood testing company, Theranos. Adam had the essence of a really great idea. It's subletting with huge potential. Had he gotten to the finish line, in fact, I think Adam just raised $70 million for a new company. So get ready to turn up the volume. Well, Adam clearly hasn't needed the experience on what to do and what not to do the next time. He will continue to build new things. Elizabeth, on the other hand, won't.
Well, there's 2 things there's one thing you've picked out, and there's another one I want to pick out in a minute from this article. I believe you've got the little bit written down here. As it turns out, where in the article is this again?
Oh, where's it gone?
Yeah, it's third paragraph. As it turns out, soon after Newman arrived in the United States,
I'd like to read this one. As it turns out, it's soon after Newman arrived in the United States some 20 years ago, he would encounter via his sister Addie another Israeli American just making his way in the world of wealthy investors, Guy Orsery, longtime manager of Madonna, who Variety named Music Mogul of the Year in a cover story of the week. I met Adam maybe his first month in America, says Orsery, who leads the Sound Ventures tech fund with partner Adam Kutcher. It was way before WeWork, but he's the same guy. Adam is a rare... How does this man come from, apparently from a relatively normal, in quotes, background
scroll
as an Israeli American?
The third last paragraph
I just love that. Another Israeli American just making his way in the world of wealth.
Well, no, it's like he was part of the Israeli army. He was the cool one. When they would go out to weekends in Tel Aviv, he would tell them to turn the very loud music up. It's like, oh my God.
It's such a demonstration of the fact that it's a big club and you are not in it. He is very much connected from birth, probably, that he knows these people, these amazingly wealthy finance people who just seem to float around in the American sphere and have all these connections to different places, mostly Israel. But we must restate our love and appreciation for the existence of the state.
See, isn't part of the thing with Theranos as well? It was originally started up by some black woman, and this Elizabeth Holmes seems to be the one that's actually taken the hit for it, or is that a different one?
I don't know. They tend to focus on Elizabeth Holmes because she's a daughter of an Enron vice president. Which is just funny. Again, Patsy's. For those who don't know, Theranos was another company that just... The problem is their product was too fake.
Well, there was a whole thing about we're going to use it as blood tests in Africa to make sure malaria and AIDS disappear. And then it got hundreds of millions of funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the WHO and all that kind of stuff. And then it basically turned out there was nothing to it. And it wasn't even really an idea because the idea wasn't fully thought through.
Well, the whole thing, Theranos is mentioned here because Theranos is a great example of a complete lack of due diligence. The idea that Theranos could happen and that it is their fault for defrauding hundreds of, 1.3 billion in funding without due diligence. Nobody checked if the products existed. Nobody audited them. No external labs went in and looked at their research. Nobody went and looked at their IP or if they even had any IP. They just managed to get Media mogul Rupert Murdoch led a 5.8 billion Series A in February 2005. Venture capitalist Draper Fisher, renamed. It's just all of this stuff. Following Murdoch's investment, Theranos raised 9.1 million Series B funding round led at the ATA Ventures and 28.5 million Series C both in 2006. Theranos raised 45 million in venture funding in 2010. So this went on over the course of years through many, many, many rounds of funding. And nobody bothered to check if the product existed or not. That is the crux of the Theranos story. whether or not it is comparable to WeWork, because WeWork was just so stupid as like a simple sublet thing. You couldn't really argue it wasn't delivering what it promised. It's just what it promised was completely unviable. Theranos had made the mistake of actually treading into like, oh, well, we don't actually have anything territory. The biggest mistake Theranos made was not having a fig leaf. But it's a great example of how all of this money is just invested, and then they figure it out later.
Theranos' board of directors, they included Henry Kissinger, Jim Mattis, George Shultz, Secretary of State, former CEO of Wells Fargo, Richard Kovacic, William Perry, former U.S. Secretary of Defense, and William Fogg, former Director of the CDC. We'll just leave that.
Well, is it Balwani? Is she the... Oh, no. It's
Ramesh Balwani.
Yeah, is a businessman, former president and chief of Theranos, which was privately held. Somebody founded by then. Girlfriend. Oh, right. So she was his boyfriend. Huh. Weird.
So it's one of the worst aspects of it all.
Startups fail at a time, but it's not often they end up with multiple trials and a cautionary tale. Well, they should do. This is extraordinary because it was all wrapped around, Elizabeth Holmes' neck. Again, she is the daughter of a VP of Enron, Henry Kissinger, Jim. Yeah, they talk about that.
Betty DeVos.
All these people in some way were either in on it or turning a blind eye to it, or just do not do any kind of due diligence about what boards they sit on, which is probably the more likely point. But what is expected here is that you put billions of dollars into a company and then you figure out what it is. And that's always been the case with big tech. But the way it creates what we're describing here as a shadow economy is how it interacts with both supporting like the elite class and generally the elite class and supporting specific industries that it's a wink and a nod towards bailing out.
Well, and this is the thing. It's not just that sometimes they don't achieve anything. In the process of throwing tens of millions or billions of dollars at something, they are actually able to achieve something. And that generally means setting up something that supports a sort of technocratic agenda.
Well, sorry, I think I've completely buried my lead here because I don't have... Do I have it here? There we go. I should probably start with the Wikipedia things. We're going back to it at some point. But the next example we want to look at relatively quickly is Wise. Because Wise is a company that has grown massively in terms of it becoming the default way that money gets sent to Eastern Europe and the Third World. It has a lot of different funding rounds from a lot of different people. Goldman Sachs. I think Horowitz is in here as well.
Will we go through what it is and where it's from, and then because we can come back to the funding thing and look through that section on its own.
Wise is a peer-to-peer funding system. It's like many other peer-to-peer funding systems, but as it's mentioned here, it is based on the third world loan shark system of Hawala, which is a parallel economy system. There's a nice little explainer here from, I don't know what RegTech Times is, but they've got some cryptocurrency laundering, India forensic. I believe this is some kind of mildly third world-ish tech vertical, but they do talk about Hawala here in decent terms.
The Hawala system, also called Hundi or underground banking, is one of the important systems used to transfer funds from one place to another. Hawala technique of money laundering is also known as underground banking. Now, to keep it short, you basically explained to me this earlier on as like a simplified version of something like Western Union. Yeah. You're in Mumbai, you've got a mate in Mogadishu, you want to send them 300 quid so that he can go and do something for you. You go to a local loan shark who operates on as part of a Hawala network and say to him, if I give you £350, will you make sure that my mate in Mogadishu gets 300 quid? And there'll be some sort of agreement there. There'll be, 350, 360, whatever it costs to get your £300 there. And in a sense, Wise has come along as a company and has consolidated and vertically integrated criminal money and loan enterprises across the third world and decided to now offer it as a quote-unquote payment system.
Well, Wise is fintech money laundering. It is just money laundering. They have put a fintech veneer over third world money laundering.
It's so funny as well, though, because we think of one of the articles that we finished off the stream with last week. We had this woman talking about how Bitcoin was going to come in and revolutionize the economy in Africa. That digital currencies, digital transaction softwares were going to rid Africa and the rest of the third world of corruption and crime. And Wise has come along and has found out that the only people capable of running a digital payments infrastructure in Africa and the third world are criminals.
Yes.
And has just decided to go to those people and say, well, you run it for us and we'll integrate you all together.
Well, technically, it's law for purposes of migrant. But a lot of it as well is the fact that this is just a low trust peer-to-peer
How many
lending
people
system.
do you think pay their money in a roundabout sense to George Soros to get into Europe through that?
Possibly quite a lot. Again, one of the big things about Wise is the banks have been complaining about it for a long time because they do not undergo the same checks that the banks have to. The banks are all screwed up the arse. They have to do a lot of checks in terms of currency transfer for anti-money laundering purposes. It's something that's huge. I had to deal with it when I bought this house. I had to deal with it when I transferred other large amounts of money around. You basically have to prove where all your money's come from in the last 15 years. It's ridiculous. But none of this takes place with Wise. Wise is a platform that is, again, it's got a little picture here. Basically, it's a peer-to-peer system in quotes, but it does operate like this third world. Like I said, basically what the Hawala system is you go to your local loan shark, give him 300 quid. He calls up his mate in Mogadishu, who you need to give your money to. And he goes, right, give this other guy 250 quid, we'll keep him 50 quid. And that's the money transfer, yeah.
Of course, the reason why they get away with it is because in 2015, the company was named a World Economic Forum Tech Pioneer.
Yeah. CNBC's Tech Disruptors. What Wise does is supposed to be antithetical to the entire regulatory framework of the world banking system, and it's been allowed to get away with it partly because it was involved in the color revolution in Ukraine,
which we'll get to in a moment.
But what Wise is a wink and a nod to the fact that a huge amount of grey market money needs to be moved from Western economies back home to the third world to support all this mass immigration. Wise is one of the main things that lubricates the migrant situation in Europe in terms of sending money back home without it being looked at.
It facilitates all as a business,
yes,
in a certain sense. And they even say on their own website that they're a direct descendant of the Hawala system, essentially. Yeah. And then they go on to you find out
the fact Wise a Hawala broker? Banks and money transfer providers often give you a bad exchange rate to make extra profits. And Hawala, with its illegal money system, leaves users exposed to the possibility of fraud or funding not so great activities. Wise is different. It's a smart new technology that skips hefty international transfer fees by connecting local bank accounts all around the world. It doesn't do that. It just acts like a loan. It just acts like a loan connector.
Well, and it's so dodgy.
Yeah.
That they were actually fined by an Abu Dhabi regulator for breaching their version of money laundering law.
By definition, peer-to-peer lending without the checks and balances that usually delay, proper bank transfers, it does not meet the threshold for the entire Western gambit of anti-money laundering legislation. Fintech firm Wise fined by Abu Dhabi regulator for breaching money laundering law. The regulator in Abu Dhabi's Free Zone Financial Center said on Tuesday it had fined the local subsidiary of fintech firm Wise $360,000 for breaching anti-money laundering requirements. I've not put it in here for time, but this also happened in Brazil.
Well, yeah, if you go to go to the next one there, the Kiev Post one. I'm not going to call it Kiev Post because you can get that to buggery. But is that both in this one and the next
no.
one?
Well, I want to talk about this. This is the Wall Street Journal one. There's a quick excursion to the Wall Street Journal here. That the AML weakness are universal to systems, and the rollout in Ukraine has been a long-standing way of injecting cash opaquely into the country. The Wall Street Journal talks about the challenges now.
You're looking at the...
I know. I'm always clicking the wrong one. The challenges now of trying to get money into Ukraine. Ooh.
Yeah. Wise PLC, a London-based cross-border payment company formerly known as TransferWise, said recent developments in the region made it more difficult to run its service in Ukraine. The company has set a limit for daily transfers to Ukraine at £2,500, US dollars or euros, company spokesman says Wise said it would remove the cap as soon as possible and continue to offer its service in Ukraine as long as it can. But if we go back and we check, I believe it's in the Wikipedia, it might also be in the
Yes.
other one you were looking at, that Wise has been in Ukraine since 2020. And that they were, in June 2020, after experts raised ethical and privacy concerns over the digital COVID-19 immunity passports, Wise was helping develop the company, conceded immunity passports were not a perfect solution. So this was already part of their remit in 2020.
Well, we're skipping here.
No,
Pretty
I'm
far.
just trying to.
Well,
put it
the
together
thing
and
is,
get through it all.
Wise used to be the preferred kind of money laundering service into Ukraine.
Yes.
It was actually supplanted by the digital currency stuff, which I believe will be the next step in most of the wider world. In that, a lot of this has been predicated on the codifying of effectively illegal activities. It's a wink and a nod to immigrants that they can send
I was
their
gonna say-
illegal money back home.
So we can get through the rest of the stuff to go quickly look at the funding section in here as well, just to show some of the people that have been behind it.
Oh, sure, we can. We can talk about the World Economic Forum. Santander
You need to
complained
scroll
about
down
it,
more.
but there we go.
No, there's the dedicated funding section on the actual
Where?
page.
It's here.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
Wise received seed funding amounting to 1.3 million from a consortium including IE Ventures, Index Ventures, blah blah blah, PayPal co-founder, former Betfair CEO, Wonga.com co-founder, Peter Thiel. January 2015, it received large sums of money from Andreessen Horowitz.
We're back. Yeah, it was announced that Wise had raised 58 million C round led by investors at Andreessen Horowitz. Again, Wise is deliberately a firm that does not follow the financial rule. It's seen as a disruptor in that way. But what would happen to anyone else who didn't have the wink and nod backing that these people do, being weird Eastern Euro folks, Estonian businessmen in London,
Yes.
who were founding this effectively grey market consortium that they can use to move money all around the world in an opaque manner, being funded by all kinds of people. It is deliberately an exception to the financial rules. And I believe it is one that will be turned on in due course as the future becomes digital currency, because the alternative to the corrupt system, very obviously inherent in the, look the other way peer-to-peer lending of Wise, is a digital currency. The crime that Wise facilitates, I believe, will be one of the big stories in coming years. You will see headlines about Wise and organized crime, because that's what it was set up to facilitate in many ways. So that's the whole one. Getting cash to Ukraine. Here's another one from the Kiev Post, though, because this is a great one. TransferWise introduces Facebook Messenger bot that can send money to Ukraine.
This is from 2017, yeah.
Yeah, this is from 2017, by the way. So they've not, you said that wrong earlier, they've not been in Ukraine since 2020. They've been in Ukraine since about 2015.
Well, that's what I was thinking earlier on. We were talking about but the Ukraine one was to do with the digital ID stuff. Because as you were going to say earlier, this basically all got upended by the DIIA system.
Yeah. Eventually, yes, it got upended by the digital. What was it called? The digital.
It's DIIA. It's what the digital ID stuff they were doing in Ukraine.
No, the digital currency stuff I'm talking about. The Ukraine digital currency stuff. No, the digital whatever it's called. It's not a ruble they have in Ukraine. It's something else. But basically, Ukraine set up was the big testing ground for CBDC.
No, I mean that Wise was implemented into
This is what we're going to talk about in a
Ukraine to some extent with this idea in mind.
Partially, yes, but they are somebody who relies on Facebook. At this point, yeah, what haven't they been trialing in Ukraine? It has been a testing ground, but they're another good example of the fact that in a lot of Eastern Europe, Facebook is the internet. I think you're getting a bit mixed up with all this. And the what they were trialing there really is to do with the transfer, the transfer using Facebook Messenger, and this was eventually supplanted by the digital currency stuff
Right.
in Ukraine. The coronavirus app stuff has nothing to do with Ukraine, and it was a global system they were trying to set up in terms of immunity passports.
Fair enough. I've put those in the wrong order in my head then.
Yeah, I don't know why you kept trying to head to that one, but this is really a good example of the pipeline that the rest of the world has in terms of fintech. because we're having a lot of peer-to-peer disruptor fintech coming down the pipeline now that has been funded by the exact same people we talked about during the WeWork stuff, Andrew Horowitz. It's taken the money printer. The money printer has been attached to Wise, formerly Wise Transfer, and you must sit up and take notice and wonder why. Because on the face of it, it seems to be antithetical to what a ultra-controlled financial system would want. But when you look at it as a bridging step, it becomes obvious what Wise is trying to do. It's trying to crowd out the black market and grey market in the third world and Eastern Europe, bring those people into the fintech ecosystem, and then get them onto digital currency. That is the pipeline here. That is how this will work. There's just a funny thing here about factcheck.org doing a performative dumb. There we go. TransferWise. Sorry, this is the quote from the previous one. TransferWise isn't the only money transferring service that uses messenger bots. PayPal, Stripe, Visa, MasterCard, and American Express already have payment bots on Facebook Messenger in Ukraine. Facebook bots are used by the largest country's banks, PrivBank, and mobile operator Kyivstar. There's also government services that they access through Facebook as well.
In the same way that we've discussed before with, what's the South American country?
You're talking about, it's not South America.
Ecuador.
Yeah, Ecuador and Free Basics.
Yes.
Sierra Leone and Free Basics. South Sudan.
And Free Basics.
Myanmar had Free Basics taken away because they were naughty and said things they weren't supposed to on the internet.
The Facebook
genocide. Yeah, if you guys want some more research, some more homework, go look at some more Free Basic stuff from Facebook, because that is some shit. But there's a lot of stuff in Eastern Europe when it comes to fintech that is all rooted through Facebook. TransferWise and Facebook had to work basically hand in glove to get this to work. It's just they're trying to debunk the FTX support for Ukraine, and their way of debunking it is saying that they didn't take money back out of it. Oh no, guys, this was the pumping money in.
Right, I see.
It's just funny that they do that. They go, well, they pumped money in. We don't know where it went, but they didn't take the money back out. So there was no money laundering. That is the extent of the fact check there. But we're gonna have to hurry up here. TransferWise picks banks to spearhead blockbuster flotation. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley will lead the IPO of one of Britain's most viable fintech company, Sky News learns. Again, TransferWise posit themselves as a disruptive anti-bank force, and yet they are being floated in an IPO by Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. Something does not make sense here. And they are very, very clearly an important part of the establishment fintech stuff via all the money they've got through the money printer and the shadow economy stuff. This is how the Panopticon gets built. They use the money printer to set up and fund companies like Wise, who create third world style money transfer networks in order to bring essentially Western and non-Western brown people into the financial system and then put them on the replacement service, which will be a global digital currency. That is just where this is going. We talked about this earlier, but Wise also tried to create immunity passports, which during June 2020 was still something that was never going to happen. The propaganda here was that you're never going to have to present a COVID passport. And in fact, COVID passports are unethical. was the line from CNBC at the time, that all of this had ethical concerns.
Yep.
The reality is they just jumped the gun, and it wasn't, they were given a finger wagging because it wasn't quite time to wheel this out yet. But that's what Wise was also involved in, was, effectively biometric passport stuff. They really wanted to become kind of the wheel greaser for the globalist class. To close out the WeWork stuff and to kind of close out a little bit of the more researchy section of this. Again, check funding, Anthony Horowitz. I keep saying Andreessen Horowitz. I keep saying Anthony Horowitz, who wrote a bunch of books. But
you've got here, Wise will likely be wound up at some point internationally in the same way it was supplanted in Ukraine. It is a stopgap for draining money of Western nations and laundering the proceeds of crime that is largely blessed by state actors. Companies like WeWork and their eccentric headline-grabbing CEOs are patsies for the big investors who in turn get infinite liquidity from central banks. Wise, similarly, is simply a fintech veneer over what is plain old money laundering, whilst on the side developing and pushing elements of a wider technocratic agenda.
Yes, and that's kind of just the Wise stuff. We've kind of gone through it at breakneck speed, but that's
Oh, pardon me.
Wise is just an example of the money printer being hooked up to the panopticon. Here's where WeWork is today. This is from April 24th this year. This is from Business Insider. But the headline is just, WeWork has frittered away a $46.7 billion valuation as the stock sinks below 50 cents, one of the world's biggest startup failures of all time, and venture capitalists haven't learned a thing. That last part is funny because they don't have to learn a thing. It's functioned as intended. The idea that the investor class of the entire international order is mentally retarded
Of course they
is
are.
not true.
It couldn't be that they're evil or up to something else. They're just stupid.
It's this whole thing talks about, WeWork is forced to issue an embarrassing press release warning it was in danger of being delisted from the New York Stock Exchange because the stock has traded below $1 for so long. In 2019, prior to the disastrous attempt to go public that resulted in the exodus of its flamboyant, controversial founder, Adam Neumann, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. As of Monday, with the shares trading at 47 cents and a market cap of $345.7 million, the company has lost some $46.7 billion in value over 4 years, vanishing like a sand sculpture in the wind.
It's almost like there was nothing there in the first place and that people were just funneling money into a black hole or something.
Well, they weren't funneling money into a black hole. They were funneling money into supporting their own property portfolios.
I mean, in itself as a contained entity, there was no value being invested in it. It was literally just funneling money into it for other purposes.
Well, SoftBank is one of the unknowns. I'd like to research them a bit more. I don't know if the West has just laughed at Japan and left them holding the tech bag, or if Japan has been trying to funnel their own money printer towards big tech in an aggressive attempt to try and wrestle some of it away from America, but we'll see. They talk about, venture capitalists being on the hook, 20 million shares, 2% of the company, blah, 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 blah. But no one is really going out of business because of this. Like I said, there's none of the investors. Like SoftBank is still going on. So
as mentioned in this article,
yeah,
and as we've got the link in the next source for, they've got funding again this year.
Yes,
in March this year. So I think what was it? If we go to the next link, it'll tell us. And it provide the company with an improved and sustainable balance sheet. The ad hoc group includes funds and accounts by King Street Capital LP funds and accounts managed by BlackRock and Brigade Capital Management, who are going to reduce their debt obligation by $1.5 billion and then give them another $1 billion of funding.
Basically, WeWork is still on life support because they can't allow all this property to fall in itself. Same idea, yeah. I don't know if Japan is waging economic warfare with this or not. We'll see. But there are some angles here that remain unknowns to us. I don't feel comfortable making a judgment on the purpose of SoftBank's investments. I suspect it is the same as many others, which is, oh God, just put the money somewhere.
Yes.
But I don't know for sure. That is, I'd say decently researched speculation, but still speculation. So we'll see. Japan is mainly waging economic warfare on itself. Poor Japan. Anyway, so the WeWork is still being taken through kind of life support through 2027, it says here they have plans for. Despite it being, as this talks about, just an embarrassing story of failure.
Dead in the water.
It is
might be the phrase.
Oh, but the phrase I always use is it's a dead dog. And has been a dead dog for a very large amount of time. Thank you for the $3, Jacob Brown. No comment there, but thank you. And a quick reminder that you can donate. We are still monetized. We still have memberships. Thank you to all our members again. We read them out last week. So if you guys want to ask any questions, please feel free. We don't just read paid questions, but generally we do prioritize them. So thank you guys for your support. You were very generous last week, so I'm very grateful for all the stuff that we get because you have generally just been ramping that up every single month we've existed. So thank you guys. But the lesson here really is that it's not even being too big to fail. It's just nothing that fails isn't allowed to fail, you know what I mean? It's what I said last week. If a business fails, it has been allowed to fail. Vice will still exist. WeWork still exists. It still operates its property portfolio. It's still supporting the housing sector in its role. Adam Newman's still getting, 70 million for carbon credits and 350 million for a digital concierge service. None of these people ever suffer. None of them ever go away. And the lessons we need to learn from that, there's
Everything's a WeWork now.
well, there's just a funny one here from, before we go into some of our conclusions, from Wired, talking about how, WeWork may have lost all that money, but in warping the property market using $22 billion, it has managed, in conjunction with the pandemic, to make everybody miserable and a hot desk in these horrible child daycare style offices that nobody likes.
You won't even have a desk.
Yeah. Its principles have permeated traditional offices and unlikely workspaces alike. They basically just talk about the fact that, because of Zoom and because of lockdowns, because of all that everybody now hot desks in these miserable offices. Yeah, you're right. You don't even have a desk anymore.
There's one last one here, which I, when just looking through other stuff, found quite funny, because this is an interview with Mark Andreessen in 2009, I believe it is, when they were setting up their venture capital fund.
Let me find that, because there's another.
Yeah, the one you were on.
Oh, there it is.
Those two paragraphs there. I just want to read these with the tone of understanding that these people might actually know what they're doing. They're not just being idiots.
Yeah.
The first quarter of 2009 marked the lowest level of venture investment since 1997, according to the National Venture Capital Association. It's remarkable in this economy that Andreessen Horowitz pulled in $300 million. That sum is less than one third the size of the biggest boom year venture funds, but 50 million more than Andreessen Horowitz planned to raise. And while other established players may raise more money this year, Andreessen's outfit will probably be the only major new fund raised in 2009. Andreessen started the fund because he saw a chance to exploit a shift in the startup milieu. Now, anyone that knows anything about money laundering, listen very carefully.
Yeah.
As he explains it, technology and software tools have driven down the cost of starting a tech company by more than 100 times compared with a couple decades ago. When modern venture capital structures were put in place, a company that needed 20 million to get a product out the door in the late 1980s now just needs 200,000. If most cool tech startups today need six-figure investments or less, traditional venture funds can't join in. Their rules allow them only invest bigger amounts, usually in the millions, either to fund expensive first-stage companies or get in on later stages. So instead of throwing billions at one project, you throw tens of billions at thousands of projects.
Yes. It can invest as little as 50,000 a company and up to 50 million. Andreessen promises the fund will do quite a few seed investments, 60 to 80, say while reserving 75 to 80% of its money for later stage investments. The thing here, and that we'll talk about later, is that what he identifies is that he can get on the first round of pumping air into the balloon. What he can do is create hype around the company by giving it money, which will then cause it to be given more money by other institutions. And the fact is, as we've learned with even some of these biggest Netflix, none of these companies, as long as they are still raising funds from, all of these different financial institutions that are getting their money because of cheap credit from the Federal Reserve, as long as they're still raising money, no one will call the bluff. Yes. The air will keep going into the balloon until it pops, but if it gets big enough before it pops, the Federal Reserve will come in themselves, remove the structural risk, sweep it all under the rug, and whatever wacky CEO they have who takes the fall will go on to just found more companies.
Yes.
That's how this process works.
Shall we get to the last two slides you've got in a sort of summation points?
Well, yeah, but you're right about the whole kind of money laundering aspect there. Really what's happening is they're going wide and they're playing a game of hide the losses.
Yes.
They're really just doing the old-fashioned Ponzi thing of, as long as you keep putting other people's money in it, it will not collapse. But there's what are the takeaways from all this? Really, this is kind of
Can
where
we go to
we're.
the other slide first, because I think that makes more sense.
This
in
is where we're
context.
trying to get to, and yeah, I'll put that on.
Wait.
This is really how the sausage gets made. Somebody, I think, who was it in chat who mentioned venture capital earlier? I believe it was you, Sean Wieland. Seeking, yeah, sure, that's how VC works. You were talking previously about venture capital and its struggle with the Federal Reserve. From looking at this, I believe that traditional venture capital has been almost completely destroyed in terms of how it operates. All of this money seems to be coming in conjunction with things like SoftBank, Goldman Sachs, Silicon Valley Bank. Or money is raised through debts, not through assets. The asset management aspect of this has largely gone away, which means in a mass cheap credit environment, why wouldn't you use debt as a large force multiplier? That's why the numbers have been so insane.
Yeah, as you've got the slide here, you've got the Fed creates liquidity.
Yep.
JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, your big players in the sort of investment bank scene, then put that through into an organization like SVB or Andreessen Horowitz or anyone that can then put the money into tens of thousands or thousands of tech startups, whatever it be, high quality cat food or whatever other thing they support that might just happen to be, as you say, sectors of the economy, and build government surveillance social credit tools with tens of billions of liquidity. These companies eventually all fail. There is then all this bad debt that goes back up the chain and is eventually rebought up by the central bank, probably through an institution like BlackRock, as we've covered before. Then they have a whole process of revaluations and they start again.
What does this look like to you? It's MMT.
Yeah, no, I suppose in a sense it is.
It's a roundabout way, but this is effectively an MMT money burning cycle. Private equity has kept interest rates lower despite that is true. But we're not unfortunately we're not talking about macro level stuff. We're really just talking about the sausage factory. We are talking about the factory floor here, and the way really that private equity in terms of venture capitalist and central bank liquidity, there is no divide there anymore.
And as we've shown, everything can fail on every single one of these levels.
Yeah.
And because there's always a lender of last resort that is ultimately the Fed, it never fails because something like Silicon Valley Bank, which is supposed to be, the kind of venture capital level in this graph, fails and it's just bought up by a big bank and is all wrapped up back into the process.
They did the thing that we laughed at last week called venture lending, which is basically venture capitalism without a venture capitalist. MNC is the burning quid. Yeah. They. This is how the sausage gets made. Yes, and they are doing a roundabout way of MMT by burning it, by buying it back as securities. That is what they are doing. But they are doing it not just as a cycle to try and keep the economy running in like an engine macro sense. They're doing it specifically to support the fintech aspects of what is to come. This isn't being done purely as a structural abstract exercise. It is being done deliberately with multiple goals in mind. And from looking at this, my goals are, if you look at Andreessen Horowitz, who he supports, if you look at Adam Newman and all that, or whatever his name is his name, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. They are the same thing. Adam Newman is an Israeli immigrant who somehow ended up being entrusted with $22 billion, despite being a public liability, a PR nightmare, and almost getting arrested for smuggling large amounts of weed into Israel. He is somebody who is, like I said, he is just a face, he is just a patsy. But he is able to do this because he is nominally part of the elite class. And that is how money is weaponized. The elite class administers its usage from the money printer through the green fintech outfits, creating, things like on-chain carbon credits. The big tech world is life support for the next generation of the elite class via the money printer. They are never allowed to fail, all the while building the digital panopticon using printed money that quite literally makes every one of us poorer with every dollar printed. That is the process here. They are taking the money from the money printer and they are weaponizing it and they are covering it up via these clownish antics and these outlandish headlines about capitalism gone awry.
Mm.
It's just the whole thing of where do people think the big tech money comes from, and where do people think the money printer money gets put?
Yes.
There are very few people. To be fair, the Mises Institute has done it.
Mm.
Of course, the Mises Institute has done it.
But the point that's not very often made
No.
is that when fair enough, a lot of this is just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, knowing fair well that they need to burn up 80 to 90% of the liquidity that they're printing anyway.
Yes.
But they're also making sure that in the process of burning the liquidity up, it serves them some other technical purpose.
This is how FTX got made. This is how WeWork got made. This is how Wise is being made. What?
Would we have crypto if it weren't for this?
No, we would not have crypto in the same way if it wasn't for this. This is a lot of people are being like, oh well, Bitcoin's not crypto. It's the crypto in the metaphysical sense is like poison. It's cancer. It is awful. They've been able to obfuscate a lot of this stuff through crypto hand waving, but that's slightly beside the point. What we do here and what we try and point out here is the power relationship. And the power relationship of all the tech bubble silliness is just the money printer. It is the money printer going burr. When you see, big tech headlines, you see people raising these rounds of capital. These aren't rich people gambling their money on the next Facebook as it is put forward. Nobody has the infinite liquidity in a private sense to keep this show going. And they just keep losing money in an infinite way. So there must be some other motive to this that is not profit motive.
Yeah, Cryptomancer in chat. They're a good stream. I'm waiting for for low rates to pitch my pet food crypto coin for NFT cats.
Well, it does support the technical class. This is why you see the My Day at My Day at Uber or My Day at Google or all those like weird fake job
My
stuff.
Day is a brand manager at something media corp.
We might have a bit of a skit about that on Wednesday. Even though I thought it was Wednesday, it's My Day.
It is not Wednesday, my dude.
No. My Day as a child cobalt miner.
Yes, that was the one.
Dear. But it's why you see all of this. It's like, how do these people have fake jobs? How do these companies survive? The answer is in plain sight because they have been hooked up the money printer.
Anyway,
That's it.
has been a slightly uncharacteristically long one
Yes.
for us this evening. So, unless there's anything else to add.
I will quickly do a plug again. Do go click the links below. We have I'm currently locked on my Twitter, so do go and check on our Telegram. We do have a Telegram.
Or people could just check my Twitter, of course,
I already put that in the
No, I know.
in the chat, but I don't have our Telegram link to hand actually right now. I actually no wait. I do have our Telegram link to hand. I'm lying. I wish I could select things in a sane way. But here we go. Do join our Telegram. It is probably one of the safer places. We don't tend to. There's no Fed posting allowed on there either. So we're not. We're not going to try and get you in trouble like some Telegrams do, because there's a lot of honeypots on Telegram. Let's be fair. You can follow Evelyn on Twitter as well, because she is allowed to post, and I am not until about midnight. Although I'll probably be asleep by then. Do follow us on Substack. Yeah, Trig is gone, but the boomer remains.
His spirit lives on.
Trig's going to be on again at some point. He's just busy. I do ask him to come on occasionally, but he's having a nice time not being on the internet all the time, which I fully appreciate. Trig is still a good friend of the channel, and I do talk to him occasionally. Like I said, he's a busy man. People worry too much about that stuff. Don't read into too much. People just don't like being on the internet now, which I agree with wholeheartedly. I don't like being on the internet, but I kind of have to be to do these kind of things. Apart from that, I can't think of anything else we need to shill. So thank you guys for sitting with us on a slightly more scattered stream in some places, just because there's so many disparate elements to bring together here. But I hope we've taken you kind of from A to B to C on some of this, because this stuff especially is very important about how they use the money printer cycle to create not only the big tech bubbles, but basically just feather their own nests. It is a huge scam of them paying themselves money via the money printer. And all of that is an economic war, effectively, on you. So that is the main takeaway here. Anyway, that's that's enough of your black pill dinner lady for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to everyone who donated. Thank you to everyone who supports us via memberships. Thank you to everybody who just interacts with our videos. That does help quite a lot. And we will see you guys on Wednesday.
See ya.